You have been told that money is yours. It is not. Money is a tool that the system assigns to you, then collects back the moment you make a mistake, and most people make the mistake on schedule. And here is the part nobody wants to say out loud. The people who get rich do not chase more money. They chase control over cash flow. They chase the right structure. They chase timing. While you were saving and hoping, they were moving money through machines you were never taught to recognize. This is not financial advice. This is financial education about how money actually works in the real world, what the rules really reward, and why in 2026, the gap between the people renting their lives and the people owning the game is widening faster than anyone comfortable admits. In 2026, you can feel it everywhere. Automation and AI keep killing middle-class jobs, but nobody calls it that on the evening news. They call it disruption. Your employer calls it efficiency. Then you look at your rent and your groceries and you realize efficiency is just a polite word for your income getting squeezed while corporate profits stay insulated. At the same time, the housing crisis is no longer a temporary shortage. In the United States, the United Kingdom, Canada, and Australia, home prices have detached from wages so hard that buying eventually became a myth. A generation is being trained to accept permanent renting, with rent rising like a tax that never ends, and inflation, sure, some headline numbers came down. But purchasing power did not magically return. Your salary buys less than it did in 2019, and the gap has been covered with credit cards, overtime, side gigs, and the kind of quiet desperation that never makes it into motivational podcasts. So when you hear people say, just save more, or just invest for the long run, you need to understand what those phrases really mean. They mean keep you calm while the financial system relabels your losses as personal responsibility. Now, let's talk about the core idea that will change how you see every bank account, every stock app, every passive income promise you see on social media. The difference between rich people and everyone else is not intelligence, it is not hustle, it is not even discipline, it is cash flow mechanics, it is ownership structure. It is how they keep money moving so it becomes leverage instead of staying still until it loses. Start with something simple and uncomfortable. Stop thinking of money as something you own. In the real economy, money is a claim. It is a ledger entry backed by institutions. When you hold it in a checking account, it is still under the influence of the system that created it. And when inflation rises, the system quietly erodes the value of what you are holding. That is why rich people get irritated by cash that sits. Not because cash is evil, because idle cash is dead. It produces no momentum. It earns a rate that usually cannot keep up with the real cost of living. It becomes a sitting duck for inflation, and for the opportunity cost you never quantify. Imagine you just sold a profitable position. You look at the deposit and you feel relief. Rich people often do not. They feel urgency. They want the money out of the waiting room. Why? Because the world does not reward people for holding. It rewards people for directing. Here is the real analogy. Gambling players want the money to be at risk. They want outcomes, fast. They bet it on uncertainty. Rich people are the opposite. They also take risk, but the risk is structured. They turn uncertainty into expected returns by buying assets that generate cash flow and by using leverage that they can survive. They do not treat money like a wallet. They treat money like a fuel line. And before you roll your eyes and say, but businesses need cash, listen carefully. There is a difference between money as a temporary buffer and money as a value container. The important metric is not how much cash sits in the account. The important metric is cash flow, meaning money moving through operations, through investments, through debt service, through reinvestment. If you want proof, look at what happens to savings when inflation hits. People saved enough during a low inflation period and then watched the purchasing power collapse. The number in their bank app stayed the same, but the world got more expensive anyway. Now connect that to 2026 reality. You have been trained by apps and accounts to think in nominal amounts. One more problem with nominal thinking is this: AI inflation. AI is lowering cost for businesses and raising value for those who control distribution. That means the economy rewards whoever can scale fastest, while workers get squeezed between automation and higher living costs. So the people who are good with money in a traditional sense are still losing, because they are good at preserving cash value instead of converting cash into cash flow or into assets that compound. Now let's go deeper. There are two kinds of money behavior that look similar from the outside, but produce totally different results inside. The first kind is the behavior of most households. Save cash, pay down debt slowly. Maybe invest in a broad index fund. Watch it go up and down. Keep the money in accounts you can access instantly. The second kind is the behavior of capital operators. Convert cash into assets and structures that keep producing income even while you sleep. Then reinvest. then use that income to acquire more. Not by magic, by accounting. And here is where accounting becomes the sharpest weapon on earth. The public thinks the stock market is about companies building products. That is true in a storybook sense. In practice, the market is also about what gets recorded as value and what gets recorded as expenses. It is about the rules of financial reporting. This is not a conspiracy. It is a feature of how capitalism communicates with itself. If you do not understand that, you will keep getting played. You will treat every dollar like it is the same, regardless of whether it is cash, an asset, a liability, or a tax write-off. But in the real game, those categories matter. They determine how your wealth shows up on paper, and paper is what institutions trade. Let's make it visceral. Picture a 32-year-old nurse named David. He works in a hospital. He is not lazy. He is not careless. He is doing what the system told him to do. Show up, build skills, get stable employment. David earns decent pay for his region. He follows the checklist. He budgets. He saves. He buys a used car instead of financing something flashy. Then he tries to buy a home. And the seller says the mortgage is possible, but the down payment isn't. The bank says rates are stabilizing, but his monthly payment is still brutal. The listing looks like it belongs to someone else's life. So David does what people do. He keeps renting, and he tells himself he is being responsible. He tells himself the market will correct. But inflation does not negotiate with feelings. It keeps raising rent, it keeps raising insurance, it keeps raising the costs of maintenance. And while his bank account grows slowly, the cost of staying alive rises faster. Now imagine the nurse story has a sequel. 6 years from now, David's bank statement looks healthier than it did. He saved more. But his purchasing power still has a dent. Because money sitting still is being taxed by inflation and also taxed by the opportunity cost of not owning cash flow assets. Now hold that image, because we will come back to it later. But first, let's talk about the money is yours lie, and why it matters for the kind of wealth you actually want. Money has a role as a medium of exchange, meaning you can trade it for goods and services. Money also has a role as a unit of account, meaning it measures value. When enough people agree that something is valuable and exchangeable, it behaves like money. This is how every financial innovation begins. Online platforms took that idea and packaged it into systems where the currency is not just dollars. It is a network-based value claim. Game credits, loyalty points, tokenized reputations. Access rights. You download an app for free, but you pay somewhere else. You pay with attention. You pay with data. You pay with subscription fees. You pay with transaction costs hidden behind convenience. Then, behind the scenes, the platform extracts profit from the flow of value moving through its network. It does not need to charge you heavily per action, because the platform makes money from the aggregate movement of capital and behavior. That is why the platforms act like they are your friend. They make you feel like you are just participating, but you are a supply chain component. Now, in the same way, Wall Street platforms are not charities. Exchanges do not make their money by charging you tiny fees forever. They make money by becoming the pipeline where liquidity moves. In 2026, you can see that clearly. Institutional investors are everywhere in crypto. Regulation has matured, custody is mainstream, compliance is heavy, and the freedom from banks narrative has become a brand story, not a business model. Meanwhile, banks and asset managers have quietly taken control. They do not need to announce it with fireworks. They just become the main holders, the main service providers, the main liquidity partners. So the promise that everyone can opt out is mostly fantasy. Most people do not opt out. They opt into another system, one with different branding and the same power dynamics. Now we get to the uncomfortable truth that changes your strategy. Rich people do not only invest, they engineer. They engineer ownership, tax treatment, risk distribution, and reporting. Let's talk about leverage and the they always borrow myth. Most people hear borrow money and think of it as failure. That is how the education system is built. It teaches fear of debt because debt can destroy you if you borrow without a plan. But rich people borrow for a different reason. They borrow to keep cash flow alive and to keep assets working. Debt is not automatically good or bad. It depends on whether the borrowed money is moving into something that generates returns that are larger than the cost of the debt after accounting for risk. In 2026, the interest rate environment still matters. When the Fed raises or holds rates at restrictive levels, it hurts households by making credit expensive and by tightening financial conditions. But it also creates a market where the wealthy can refinance opportunistically and where assets with stable cash flow become more valuable. Workers feel rates immediately. Rich people feel rates through spreads and timing. That difference alone is a transfer of wealth, and here is the pattern interrupt you need to keep. The system does not transfer wealth by stealing from your account directly. It transfers wealth by making your time expensive and making their options cheap. So when you tell yourself, I just need to save, you are ignoring the real mechanism. Savings is slow. Asset accumulation for the wealthy is often faster because they use leverage, tax planning, and cash flow reinvestment loops. Now let's get into the dead money versus living money concept in a way that actually applies to 2026. Dead money is cash that does not do work for you. It sits in a bank account. It earns a rate that often fails to beat inflation. It keeps you safe in a way that also traps you. Living money is money converted into assets or into structures that create income or increase in value in a way that gets recognized as wealth in accounting and in markets. But there is a catch nobody teaches in school. Living money is not just about buying any asset, it is about buying the right kind of asset under the right kind of ownership. Because an asset inside a personal bank account behaves differently than an asset inside a business entity. And that brings us to the world of corporate accounting, tax treatment, and depreciation. Picture a piece of property or a financial asset that rises in value over time. If you buy it personally, the tax treatment and the reporting rules differ from if you buy it inside a corporation. Now, corporations have mechanisms that let them turn certain costs into deductions over time. One of those is depreciation for tangible assets. Another is how businesses handle valuation changes and reporting. The important part is not memorizing the technical definitions. The important part is recognizing that the rich think like accountants, not like bloggers. Let me give you a simple scenario that illustrates the principle. Imagine an investor who is well connected buys a valuable asset. If they buy it personally, the asset sits in their personal wealth portfolio and any tax benefits are limited. If they buy it through a corporation, certain parts of the accounting treatment can reduce taxable income in specific ways over defined periods. That reduction matters because corporate taxes are not paid on what you feel like you made. They are paid based on taxable income after allowed deductions. So a business can reduce taxes through legitimate accounting methods while still positioning the owner for wealth gains outside of the immediate tax burden. This is not illegal. This is exactly how legal systems are structured, to create categories and rules. Whoever learns the rules early and invests in professionals who understand them wins. And here is where the story gets uglier. Many ordinary people assume taxes are fixed and unavoidable, like gravity. They treat tax as a punishment. The wealthy treat tax as a variable within constraints. That is why you see super wealthy people hiring teams of professionals, not for greed, for precision. Because in a system where money is measured on paper, your structure determines your paper. Now bring that back to 2026 because this is not theoretical anymore. Look at retirement. Social Security is under pressure. Many pension systems are underfunded. Governments delay, raise retirement ages, adjust benefits, and ask the public to accept less. You can watch the demographic math. Aging populations increase the dependency ratio. That is not a conspiracy, it is arithmetic. So ordinary people cannot rely on retirement like past generations did. They are forced to self-fund more. Yet wages are squeezed and housing is unaffordable. That means savings rates suffer, and the retirement gap widens. If you are behind already, dead money is a trap. It is not just inflation, it is time. Every year you waste with cash sitting in a low-yield account is a year you lose compounding. And compounding is not just an investment concept, it is a wealth conversion concept. Living money compounds cash flow and buying power, while dead money only maintains a shrinking snapshot. Now, you might ask, why does the stock market keep reaching highs while people struggle? The answer is not that the market is lying. The answer is that markets are selecting participants. In 2026, broad index funds can rise while your personal life worsens if you do not hold enough assets or if your savings is too small to matter compared to rising costs. Meanwhile, the wealthy can buy the dips and keep compounding because they have income, leverage, and liquidity. This is also why the richest people often do not feel like they are risking wealth the way you feel you risk your rent check. Their portfolios are diversified across asset types and jurisdictions. Their downside can be managed with hedging and structured finance. Your downside is immediate and human. And there is another layer. When the Fed holds interest rates high or fluctuates them, asset prices react. But households experience rates as survival costs. The system is asymmetric. Now let's connect to another 2026 reality. AI. AI is transforming labor faster than politicians can explain. Middle-skill jobs are getting automated. Customer service is partially automated. Even certain coding tasks are being automated. And yes, many of the learn-to-code promises from a few years ago look like jokes now. AI writes drafts, refactors code, and produces working prototypes with frightening speed. That does not mean humans become irrelevant entirely. It means the wage pressure shifts upward and downward, fewer roles stay mid-level, and the winners are those who own platforms, data access, and capital. So if you are trying to get rich by selling your labor, you are trying to win a game where the scoreboard is controlled by machines you cannot compete with. The wealthy shift their strategy. They move from labor income to capital income, from paycheck security to asset-driven security. And that is exactly why the concept of cash flow keeps coming up. Capital income is money that arrives without requiring you to be present at the workplace every day. Now, here is the open loop. Remember the nurse David we talked about earlier? We will return. A year after he realized buying a home was impossible, David's friend introduced him to passive income. Not passive like effortless, passive like we promise you do less. David watched videos about rental properties. He considered crowdfunding. He looked at crypto. He even tried to join a creator economy side hustle, thinking he could become one of those people who posts online and makes money from ads. He started posting. He got a few views. He realized the truth quickly. Most creators make $0 that matter. The creator economy is not a retirement plan. It is a lottery with audience numbers instead of scratch-off tickets, and the platform keeps the majority of value. Meanwhile, his bills kept increasing, his rent increased again, his insurance increased, the cost of living kept eating every extra he found. Then one day, David got an unexpected medical bill. Not a disaster, not a movie-level tragedy, just an amount large enough to make his budget collapse for a month. He did not go bankrupt because the system is gentle. He almost did because the system is slow. It simply drains you over time until one event finishes you. That is the real reason financial content feels cruel. It keeps telling you that the path is simple, but when you are one emergency away, simplicity is a luxury. David tried to borrow. His credit card got him through the month, but the interest made him poorer. He told himself he would pay it off fast. He did not. The payoff timeline kept stretching, and by the time he thought he was catching up, rent had risen again. That is dead money in action. Cash that sits and cash that borrows without structure is not wealth. It is just delay. Now let's hit the next layer. Why the wealthy hate holding cash. Because cash in a bank account is not just dead money. It is also a missed chance to acquire assets under favorable conditions. In a high-rate environment, the wealthy can buy more when others panic. They can refinance when their income streams support it. They can negotiate terms. They can move across markets quickly because they have teams and liquidity. When everyone else is forced into reactive decisions, the wealthy make strategic ones. Now, we should talk about how people like Warren Buffett think about this. Buffett is not a magician. He is an owner. He buys businesses that produce cash flow. He holds when the business produces value over time. Ray Dalio built his approach around understanding regimes, risk, and how assets behave relative to one another. These aren't just philosophies, they are process systems designed to survive volatility and preserve purchasing power. Jamie Dimon, even when he talks about the strength of banks, is basically admitting that financial institutions profit when capital flows. The bank is not your friend. It is a machine built to extract spread and fees, then manage risk with scale. Larry Fink, the head of a major asset manager, has repeated that he believes we are entering a new era of power and data-driven capital. Translation: asset managers want more assets under management. They want the inflows. They want the control. So you do not just compete with other individuals. In 2026, you compete with institutions built to capture the future. Now, the dark truth is not that the wealthy are secretly smarter. The dark truth is that the rules are written for the wealthy to exploit. Let me say that again without softening it. The rules are written for the wealthy to exploit. Not always maliciously, not always with a smoking gun, but because legislation is shaped by those with access to power, and because the public education system rarely teaches the mechanics of financial structure, tax categories, and ownership strategies. You are taught generalities. You are taught to fear risk. You are taught to trust institutions. But you are not taught how capital formation really happens. And then social media sells you a dream: passive income, financial freedom. That dream is not entirely false, but it is massively incomplete. Because the people selling it are hiding the funnel. They monetize attention, they build audiences, then they sell courses, sponsors, affiliates, and brand deals. The money comes from being a marketer, not from being a capital owner. That is why most people who try to copy the creator lifestyle do not get rich. They get exhausted, they get demoralized, they get monetized by someone else. Now, we also need to address the temptation of crypto. In the beginning, crypto promised decentralization. It promised freedom from banks. But in 2026, the reality is more boring and more brutal. Regulation created compliance rails. Institutional custody normalized. Market makers dominate liquidity. Many coins are held by large entities. Retail participants often provide volatility, while institutions provide the structure that profits from that volatility. That does not mean blockchain is useless. It means the ecosystem matured, and maturation usually favors capital, access, and risk management. So the dream was not wrong. It was incomplete. The system still consolidates now. Let's pivot to something deeper. Why certain countries can print money and never fully